Welcome back, Metalheads, to another edition of the Friday 13th YouTube channel. If you subscribed, thank you. If you haven't, please do. So, today on the 8th of March 2022, I had the opportunity to interview Sean Killian from the band Vio-Lence. Now, we all know Vio-Lence started out in the 80s, a hard-hitting thrash band from the Bay Area. The band released their first album back in 1988 called Eternal Nightmare, which is a really heavy album. Really brutal debut, kind of reminds me of Exodus's Bonded by Blood, another fantastic album. So, like I said, the band released their first album back in '88. The second album was released on Atlantic Records, which was called Oppressing the Masses, a very heavy album. If you got it, you'll know what I mean. And the band released their third album, Nothing to Gain, back in 1993. Hard times for the band, directions weren't correct, so the band called it a day. As we all know, if you don't know, the band have just released a new EP which came out last Friday on Metal Bay Records. It's called Let the World Burn. It's a 5-song EP, hard-hitting, fast, typical Vio-Lence, brilliant EP. If you haven't got it, get a copy, it's fantastic. So, like I said, I'd like to thank Sean for the interview. I'd also like to thank Andy at Metal Blade for setting it up. Cheers, Andy. So, please share this interview on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and any social media sites, as well as Facebook groups. Stay safe, everybody. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the interview. Leave some comments. And to everybody in the Ukraine, be safe. We're a metal unity and we stand together. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, then, talking to Sean from Vio-Lence. Sean, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing great. Beautiful sunny day in California.
Yeah, it's pretty cold here in England at the moment.
I'll bet.
So you probably know about Friday the 13th. Are you familiar with Friday the 13th?
No, I'm not actually.
Okay, well, it's been going for over 3 decades.
Holy shit.
It started out back in 1988 as a fanzine.
Oh, sweet.
So I actually got one of your demos before you got a record deal with MCA Mechanic.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I've still got the original demo that Mechanic Records sent out to everybody.
Okay, that's awesome.
So I have reviewed your albums before. I am good friends with Phil, so when you speak to Phil, say hello for me.
I will. I'll tell him hello.
Okay, then. I'm going to ask you about the EP first then, Sean.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, so why did you decide to call the EP Let the World Burn? What was the reason for calling the EP?
Well, it seems like lately everything, the only answer to anything is to let it burn. You know, that you got all this craziness that was going on in the U.S. and people burning their own cities. And then, you know, I don't know, it's just kind of like one of those things where, well, if you want to destroy everything, that's fine. Just let it burn then. And also it's like a lot of people these days are so, you know, engulfed in their personal lives, and they kind of believe whatever's told to them because they're mentally lazy. They don't want to go and do any research about anything. And so it's kind of like, well, you know, all your problems and all the things that you think are so important, if there was an extinction event on this planet, no one would care. No one would remember you. You'd be gone forever. And you'd only be remembered if, you know, in 20 million years, another life form was on the planet that could reason.
Right.
And so it's kind of like, well, let the world burn. I mean, you know, your problems aren't as bad as you think they are. Maybe you should pay a little more attention to the important things.
Yeah, true. Did you have any other titles for this EP? And also, why did you decide to do an EP and not a full-length album?
Well, when Phil and I talked back in June 1st, we were playing with Sacred Reich in Mesa, Arizona, and that was in 2019. We talked about doing new music and what that would look like, and you know what it would sound like, and we both agreed that trying to do a 10-song album or 12-song album was going to be a little much since we hadn't really been in the studio and written together in a long time. So we chose 4 songs at the time to do 4 songs. Then once we got the writing really started after when the COVID hit, because then instead of going to a rehearsal studio and practicing for shows, we were there just writing because there was no shows to be played. So then, you know, the 4 songs once we got going, you know, Flesh from Bone was the first one we wrote. Then we wrote Screaming Always. And then once we got on a roll, it was just like, you know, the ideas kept coming. So we added that fifth song. And, you know, we keep writing now. And so we think the 5-song format's good because, you know, we've got a song pretty much written. I got to go and demo my vocals. And so as long as we just keep writing and writing, we could put out 5 songs and get music out to people as opposed to waiting, you know, because if we did a whole 10-song album, I mean, it might be just, you know, December of 2023 that we actually are able to put something out. So, you know, if we do 5 songs, we could probably get something out in January, you know. And once we write, the writing process for us didn't take as much time as it did to, you know, the mixing and, you know, the recording went pretty good. We were taking breaks, you know, it wasn't like we went in the studio and worked, you know, 4 straight weeks to record this. We were kind of coming in and out, you know, of Trident Studios with one, and it just seemed like a less sterile environment, you know, where you're not there so much to work, you're there having a good time. And you know, I did my vocals. We did 3 days, the first session, and then Juan and I came back like 3 weeks later and did a couple more days. And then once we had it all recorded, you know, just the label and getting the thing pressed and everything takes a long time. So, you know, 5 songs is good for us because if we can, like I said, we have one now, and you know, here we are in March. We could probably, you know, if we stay focused and keep writing, and you know, Pro Tools helps a lot with that, you know, for us to be able to do that with Pro Tools. Yeah, we could easily probably get 5 songs out before November. You know, we could probably get them written, and then it's just a matter of getting in the studio. You know, because we started writing this record in March of 2020, and we were pretty much done writing around September, I think it was. So, you know, we like that format. We just don't want to get, you know, we're not young punks anymore. You know, we don't want to get in a situation where we're putting ourselves in this insurmountable task, you know, and it becomes like a business as opposed to something we enjoy.
Right then, so you didn't have any other titles for this EP then? That was it. That was the only title you had.
No, we didn't have any titles. I mean, we figured this because, you know, the artwork kind of reflected more upon like Flesh from Bone, which was you know, influenced by that 14th century, you know, Dark Ages.
Oh, the Vladimir.
And Vlad falls in there because he was yeah, and he falls right in there, right? He's the perfect freaking villain. But the funny part is in Wallachia, he's like celebrated as like a hero, you know.
It kind of reminds me a bit of the album Oppressing the Masses, that kind of thing. Instead of being on the being hanging, he's being impaled. Instead, it's kind of that sort of vibe, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, what amazes me about Vlad the Impaler is that he went up against such massive forces, but used that psychological warfare to beat them. You know, until they caught him eventually in time and chopped his head off. But
so, would you say
you know, that's part of the 14th century?
Would you say your EP's like the same sort of idea then? Psychological sort of mind.
Yeah, you know, because. When I wrote Eternal Nightmare, you know, a lot of it was, you know, specific, you know, Kill on Command. But this record, other than Gato Negro, it's more about, you know, I wanted to kind of be vague a little bit so that people read it and they could make up their own idea, you know, they're in their own mind, you know, their mind's eye, they could see images, that, you know, create images in their head and then come to their own conclusions about what they think I'm writing about, you know. Because I don't, for this, I wanted that kind of dynamic of, you know, okay, well, here it is. You read the lyrics, you listen to the music, and you tell me what you think, you know?
Yeah, right. Okay, then. So when you got back together again, I mean, did you not approach Dean or the older members of the band for this lineup? Did you try getting older with?
Oh yeah, Dean was playing with us. Yeah, Dean was playing shows with us, and Ray Vegas was playing shows with us through 2019. Um, when it came to Ray, it was like he's like a punk guitar player, so he has that open string strumming kind of punk style. And Phil wanted that muted, down picking playing when we went to record. So, Bobby and Perry had been friends for a long time. So, and it wasn't so much about, oh, well, can Bobby play or can this guy play? We knew Bobby could play. And Christian as well. It's just a matter of, do these guys fit in a room with us? I mean, can we sit around? Can we record a record and sit around and have a bunch of downtime and still get along? And then Dean, it was just a matter of, he just didn't have the time. I mean, he was committed to his family and his work and stuff. So, and when we wrote, it was not like scheduled days. It was, we'd go in, Phil had some riffs, we'd go in, we'd try to assemble them, verse, bridge, chorus, stuff like that, and put those riffs in, create a song. And then I would take it, and we might not practice for another 5 days while I'm writing lyrics, and then we'll practice 3 days in a row. And so when we wrote, it was just Phil, Perry, and I in the room. And so Dean wasn't going to work with Dean's schedule. And so then when it was time to get somebody else, Phil and Christian, they'd known each other since Machine Head and Fear Factory toured together. And he was down in Venice Beach at the time. So Phil says, well, I got the perfect guy. And he brought him up. And, when he said he was from Fear Factory, I was like, okay, well, I know the guy can play. I don't know who he is, but I know he can play if he played in that band. And so it was, again, a matter of, okay, who's Christian? What's he like? And do we all fit together well? And so that's what we got, and it's a good vibe we have in the band. We did the video. We were there from, I think 9 in the morning or 10 in the morning until 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night. And you only really work maybe 40 minutes. So the rest of that time you're just sitting around, waiting for your next turn. And so there's a lot of time when we're just hanging out, and that's what's more important to us than anything, is that hangout time. And like I said, those cats, they can play. There's no questioning that.
I mean, Bobby, obviously. Sorry, you were saying, Sean.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, you got Bobby from Overkill. I mean, it's kind of weird because Phil did that album with Bobby Blitz, and you've got the old guitarist. I mean, who else did you audition besides Bobby?
No one. It wasn't a matter of auditions. That was the thing. It was like, we knew Bobby. Perry knew Bobby. They were good friends, and and so it wasn't. It was just not a matter of auditioning. It was like, okay, well, bring Bob. Let's fly Bobby out from Palm Beach, and let's see what Bobby's like, in the room with us. And once he was here and we all were just kind of hanging out, man, I was like, oh, it's obvious Bobby's the guy, It wasn't a matter of any history or how he could play or what he's written in the past. It was, because that's unquestioned,
Yeah, yes. So how long did it take to write these 4 songs, and how many new songs do you have wrote?
So the 5 songs took us, we started really heavily in March. It would probably take it, because it's a loose environment, right? We're not trying to go to work every day at the studio and write and force out music. So, I think the songs, they probably averaged about 2 months each, to write. And so, and like I said, it wasn't, when we were doing Oppressing the Masses and Nothing to Gain, it was work, we were in there working to write, and that's why we were there. And so when you're in that environment, you feel this like, oh, we have to produce, and maybe that's not the best riff, but it's a pretty good riff, and we could write some lyrics over it and make it better. But this was more like Eternal Nightmare, because Eternal Nightmare was written by, some punk kids that just wanted to play music, and then Oppressing the Masses and Nothing to Gain was written by a band that had to write music. And so this EP is kind of like that same Eternal Nightmare vibe. It's just, these guys just getting together and trying and writing music that they wanted to write. So there's nothing left on the cutting room floor. Nothing was left on the cutting room floor.
So it's basically back to your youth then, basically.
Yeah, and enjoying it, you know.
Right then, Sean, I'm going to ask you about the production for the EP. You had like three people involved. One, two Matson, and the other guy. How did you get involved with all the three people involved?
Well, we recorded at Trident Studios, and Juan is a Bay Area local, so we've all known him for a long time, and it's a real comfortable environment to work with Juan, and it's local, so we could record when when the guys were available, so we didn't have to all be down there recording, and we each took our turns, and like Perry was the first one to go in, and he worked over some guitar, because the guys gave him some scratch guitars, and he took about a week. I think he was down there for 4 straight days or maybe 5 straight days. And I never went down when he was recording. Phil was down there with Juan beating up on him, and I didn't want to be there for that. So, that was great. And as far as two, Christian Oldie Wolber's got us hooked up with two. The guy seems to know everyone in the music industry. And so then we were working with someone else at the time, but the guys were saying that everything was too like bunched up together. They couldn't hear the separation in the different instruments. And so that's when we turned to two. And then Christian also hooked us up with Ted Jensen there to master the thing in Florida. And he did a great job. Once we got it back from Ted, it was like, wow, he really opened up the sound on the EP for us. And that's where you can hear all those drums and all those cymbals and everything else that Perry's smashing on. And, all the leads come out really nice and clean. And so, those two guys too, and Ted were definitely people that Christian hooked us up with.
So Ted was a bit of a strange choice. Well, obviously, he's worked with Alice in Chains, but he's also worked with Death Angel, so I kind of see why you went with him.
Yeah, and it was more about relationships, I think, too. With Christian, the guy, it's amazing. He knows everyone.
Wow.
Yeah.
So who else did you approach for production for this EP?
We went to Terry Date, and we got a couple samples from him. And, for me, I thought I sounded great, but, I'm not everyone. I'm just myself. So the other guys, they were just thinking that they wanted to try a couple different people, and two really dialed it in the way, Bobby and Phil wanted to, what they were looking to hear. He really nailed it on the head for him.
Did you think of working with anybody like Andy Sneap or Jacob Hansen?
No, at first it was Terry, and then from there it was two. And when two sent us his mix, sample mix, it was like the guys fell in love with it. So there was no going any further. And just like with the label, we didn't go out and try to pursue different labels or get the best deal we could get. We went to Metal Blade because they're just people that we wanted to work with. Brian's been in it since the beginning, and that's kind of how this band operates.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the labels. Obviously Metal Blade, Nuclear Blast would have been a big one that would have been pursuing you, I guess, on that score.
Yeah. When we played the Psycho Fest in 2019, Brian was there, and Phil got a chance to chat with him for a little bit, and it was what we were looking for. We just wanted enough money to do the recording and get through the process of recording, and we didn't need a big advance. And so and the people at the label, that label, they really work hard. Heidi and Rick and Tom, they really put a lot of effort into helping us get out there. And Tom's just constantly sending me interviews to do, and so it's like they like probably one of the bigger independent labels, and we really like that about them.
Yeah, well, they're one of the first, with Longside Music for Nations and Noise Records, they were big labels from the 80s, aren't they, really? That have kept going all this time.
And they've been going all this time, yeah.
Bit like me.
Exactly. And fanzine. Dude, when you said fanzine, it's fanzine. Oh,
yeah. It's I started back in 1988, and the first issue had Crimson Glory in it. It had Liege Lord, Incubus, Leeway, Blood Feast, Sacred Right, Forbidden.
Yeah.
So
that was that era of fanzines, you know.
I know, I know. I used to sell them outside of concerts. I used to go to gigs, interview bands, and then just sell them outside of the concerts. But I'm really surprised I never got to interview you guys back in the day, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, I got to review your records, but never got the interview. But hey, we're here now. That's the main thing. So I'm going to
Yeah,
ask you now, Sean, about the songs of the EP, Flesh and Bone. What does that mean to you?
Flesh from Bone is like I I love history. You know, I love reading about history and the struggles of man back then, and because you know, compared to what we know, you know, relative to what we deal with every day, you know, their lives were so much more difficult to manage, and um, that and the warfare back then, you know, they didn't have gunpowder, they didn't have what we have today, so it was hand to hand combat, and you know, Vlad, you know, I studied Vlad a little bit, and I was really impressed by the fact that you know he would take on these such his enemies were just these massive armies, and he would use his psychological warfare to basically conquer them. Because no matter how many generals are pushing their troops, when you come upon that many impaled bodies, those troops start going, you know, I don't want to be on that the end of that stick.
So
And
would you
it just, yeah, go ahead.
so would you say that Impaler is Dracula then, or is that just you think it's just a myth or all that bullshit?
Well, Dracula is his. So they were. He was part of his father and part of Order of the Dragon, and Dracula's was his father, and then Dracula is it was Vlad. But yeah, it was their. I guess it was their club, you know. So that was actually, you know, his title was Dracula, but you know, Bram Stoker took it. I don't think what I read, Bram Stoker never even went to Vlad's castle or Wallachia or anywhere. He just put the two stories together, you know, and made Dracula the vampire, you know, the Prince of Darkness. But yeah, and Vlad was interesting in that, you know, his subjects, I guess you could call it back then, you know, he you know, he ruled with an iron fist, and I think people that lived there that were just normal law-abiding citizens trying to get by appreciated that, because if you were a thief or I mean, sometimes we went a little extreme, but if you were a thief or someone that was trying to get it over on society in Wallachia, you were going to pay the price. And so his whole objective was to deter people from thinking that, well, if I steal this bag of gold, I'll get away with it. But, you know, they didn't get away with it. And the alternative wasn't a few months in jail, it was impalement.
Yeah.
There was one story I read that I can't remember if it was his chef or one of the staff at his castle. He showed up to work all disheveled looking, you know, and so Vlad blamed the wife and sent his troops to the house and impaled the wife, and left her in the front of their house.
She probably would have liked that.
Yeah, yeah. So you know, he didn't look upon the guy that was working at his castle as the problem. He immediately went straight to the wife.
So that was the first song you wrote when you got back together, then.
It was,
Screaming
yeah,
about Vlad.
yeah, and you know, for me, it's like putting the vocal patterns together and trying to capture that is the hardest part. You know, the lyrics. I a lot of times, sometimes I have a hard time with the lyrics. You know, trying to get the right words in there and get it. But it's the phrasing and the vocal patterns that are the. Once I get those, then the lyrics sometimes they come pretty quick.
Right then, so the next song, Screaming Always, what's that about?
So Screaming Always, you know, I was kind of sitting there pondering about, you know, the world and the people that live in this world, and at any given time, anywhere in the world, someone is screaming for one reason or another. And so that kind of came to my mind, Screaming Always. You know, it's like, yeah, there's this planet has someone sometime right now screaming over one thing or another, whether it be tragedy, whether it be, you know, the birth of a child or whatever. You know, there's someone screaming on this planet, and that's kind of where that concept came from.
Okay, then. So the next song, "Upon Thy Cross," is that to do with Vlad again, or is it something completely
No,
different?
upon their cross is like you get these. It's like with media and people and society, it's like there's always something that they hold upon their cross so that everyone could rally around, and whether it be, the George Floyd thing or what's going on in Ukraine now, it's like this distraction of, this is bad and everyone needs to view it as bad. And we're going to put it up here on this cross so that you can all see and appreciate it and worship our opinion of how you should be thinking, when there's so much information that's missing that they can take something and put it upon their cross, the media or the governments and not just the US government, any government, can do that and create a perspective that may or may not be accurate.
Right then, the next song, I'm gonna, how do you say this? Gator Ni G.
Gato Negro.
Okay, then what does that mean? Obviously, it's
So
Spanish.
it is Spanish. So I was looking for something else to write about, something cool to write about. And I listened to a spoken word of Edgar Allan Poe's Black Cat on YouTube. And the story is just so macabre that it inspired that song for me. And, I didn't want to call it Black Cat because that just seemed kind of plain. So, we went and said, well, Gato Negro, that sounds cool. We got a lot of Spanish speaking fans out there. And I think they'll appreciate the fact that we titled something in their language. And, but it was inspired definitely by the Black Cat, Edgar Allan Poe's Black Cat.
Did you try to sing it in Spanish originally?
No, no, I don't know Spanish. I know
Okay,
Gato Negro, Black Cat.
interesting. Then you got the last song, obviously the title of the EP, "Let the World Burn."
Yeah, Let the World Burn is like, people, I don't know, I see a lot of tragic things going on here these days, and it's always been that way in modern society, and it's like, well, if you're so hung up on everything that's so you think so important, but if there was a cataclysmic event and an extinction event on this planet, nothing that you care about right now, nothing that matters so much that you put so much vested interest in, wouldn't even matter or be remembered. So what good is it, to do that, to go around and just let yourself be kind of drug around by the, by the nose. And so if there was an extinction event, it would be for another 10 or 20 million years before some life form would inhabit this planet again. And if it wasn't a life form that could reason, then you would be forgotten.
Right.
Like the dinosaurs, they can't reason. So they couldn't dig up bones of past dinosaurs that were before them but the reason why we know about them is because we can reason. But if the next life form on this planet, it will happen. I mean, we're not, there's, humanity wants to believe that they're the last of the life forms that will be on this planet, but that definitely is not the case.
Right.
It's proven over and over and over again through the history of this planet.
Right then, have you done a promotional video? Or is it just a lyrical video for this EP for people that don't know?
Yeah, we did the lyrical EP for Flesh from Bone, and we also have the video. We also have a video for Let the World Burn, and we work with Robert Mattis, and he did some Armored Saint stuff. We were kind of looking for someone to do a green screen video for us, and the label, Heidi over there at the label, she hooked us up with Robert, and it went well. We think it went pretty good.
Brilliant. So the
It's out
EP,
there on YouTube.
yeah. So the EP came out last Friday. How's it doing so far for you? What's the reaction?
People love it. I mean, you got your haters out there, but who gives a crap?
There'll be a lot of
But
people, out there saying, "Why is it an EP? Why not an album?"
yeah, well, we're not. We just want this to be a fun thing for us, and not some super serious deal where we're trying to, change the world or be in a studio writing music for 5 straight months and just putting out stuff that may or may not be something that we want to represent, the band Vio-Lence. And so when we do get together to write, it's like, well, let's not overcommit ourselves, because what'll happen is if we go to label and we go, okay, well, let's do a full length album, and maybe that's 10 songs, 12 songs. By the time you're around the 12th song, right? I mean, you pretty much squeeze the juice out of that freaking tomato as much as you can. And we don't want to be in that situation. We just kind of want to, okay, let's do another 5 songs. And then we work on it. Cause like with the EP, nothing was left on the cutting room floor. There was no throwaway anything. Now riffs came in and out of the studio, but once we started putting a song together, it pretty much stuck, you know?
So you want to keep
And that's
it
the way
fresh.
we like it.
You just want to
keep it fresh and have fun.
Yeah. So how do you see this EP as a progression from the previous albums you did back in the day?
Well, we definitely, Phil and I, we wanted to keep it thrash. We didn't want to change who we were. And, Nothing to Gain was an album that was kind of driven by outside forces. You know, the grunge thing was coming on board, and, what do they call that? New metal or?
Yeah, new metal, yeah. All that
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah, that's a bunch of crap. but the labels were like, oh, we have these bands and we got to do something with them so we can keep, and so there was a lot of outside influences for that record. It's like, well, if we don't do this and we don't do that, then we won't have a label. Where Eternal Nightmare was written by a bunch of punk kids having a good time, and Oppressing the Masses was like, okay, we got to follow up Eternal Nightmare, and we wanted it to be heavy. So when we looked at this EP, it was like, okay, we got to stick to our guns, and the Oppressing them. It needs to be an advancement from Eternal Nightmare to Oppressing the Masses to the EP.
Yeah, call them the third album kind of thing.
Yeah, and then not to be influenced. We didn't want to come into this like we did Nothing to Gain and have people telling us what they think we should sound like or what's good or what's not. And we went through all that work with Megaforce, and then they didn't even put the record out. And so then we're like, well, shit, why did we go through all that? We should have just stuck to our guns, Wow. And so this time around, it was like, well, I'm gonna write lyrics, and if people get offended, I really don't give a crap, because I didn't care during Eternal Nightmare. I didn't care during Oppressing the Masses. And, so it's like this time around, it was like, we're going hardcore thrash. We're gonna stick to our guns, and we're gonna say things that maybe people like or don't like. It doesn't really matter to us. And the great thing about being on Metal Blade is they're totally supportive of who we are. And, if you look back at our history, Eternal Nightmare was on Mechanics, Suppressing the Masses on Megaforce, Nothing to Gain was on, I think, Bleeding Heart Records.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, part of Music for Nations, I think.
Yeah. And so it's because it was like you do what you do, and then they'd be like, oh, like literally Steve Sinclair from Mechanics Records called me on the phone, and after I submitted the lyrics for Oppressing the Masses, and he actually was like, well, we think you should be more grammatically correct. So I took the time to rewrite some of your lyrics. I was wondering if you wanted to hear it. I'm all, oh, hell yeah, I want to hear that all day long. And, hung up that phone, picked it back up and called Debbie Abono and said, well, this just happened. That was the end of that relationship. And it's just kind of like, people sign us and then they go, well, can you be more like this? And it's like, no, we can't, And so that's why I love being a Metal Blade. We signed just for the EP, and we'll write some more music, and we'll do another deal for another EP or whatever it is we put together.
Yeah, so you're about to tour Europe in springtime, summer, with like you're playing Bloodstock Festival. What other festivals are you playing?
We're on the Alcatraz Festival, and we have another festival that we have that hasn't been announced yet.
So you broke up then. Sorry, the picture froze. You said you're playing Alcatraz.
So yeah, we're playing Alcatraz. We're on another festival that same week that hasn't been announced yet. So, but yeah, we need to wait for some countries to open up. We have our booking agent out there, and he's looking at different countries that we could play in, and then we have the tour at the end of the year, the November-December Headbangers Ball tour with Whiplash and Artillery.
Yeah, are you doing some concert with like Coroner and somebody else? I've noticed.
Yeah, out here in the States in May, we're taking off to go to Chicago, Boston, New York, Philly, and then we both go to the Maryland Death Fest. And they just added, ay caramba, I do know some Spanish. They just added, let me tell you who they just added. Where are they? Exciter, I think it is.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, from Canada. That's it. Yeah,
they just Yeah, that just came out today. So that's going to be a great lineup, and it'll be fun shows. And I know that Coroner doesn't come out to the U.S. very often, and I think we work with the same booking agents in the States here. Yeah, we're really excited about that. You know.
So are you playing any more? Are you playing a warm up show in England before Bloodstock, or is it just Bloodstock? Then you head out to Europe.
No, nothing scheduled right now. That doesn't mean something won't pop up, but you have, when you do these festivals, you're committed to so many months before and after that you're not playing in a certain in these countries. So if something does pop up, we'll have to be talking to Vicky and over there at Bloodstock and getting it all worked out.
Yeah.
But our agent's working on stuff that's open because there's only one of us that's vaccinated. So if a country's saying, well, you have to be this and we're not going to go, not that we don't want to, it's just we don't want to comply to that.
Is that the reason why you didn't play Bloodstock last year?
Well, at the time with Bloodstock, they hadn't opened the country yet. So we would have had to quarantine for 14 days. And then to go from there to Belgium would have been the same situation. So it wouldn't have worked out. And then we could go to Belgium and do the Alcatraz Fest. And then we played a Fresno show and got COVID. And so that kind of canceled 6 of our shows, unfortunately.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. And then I had it. I was in the hospital for a few days. It was like the 3rd week I had it that it really started messing with my breathing. So
I know where you're coming from. I got it at Bloodstock last year watching Judas Priest and Saxon. So
yeah, I would have
kind of
loved
fucked me up a bit. Kind of fucked me up. I couldn't taste or smell anything and fatigue for like a month.
Yeah. It took me it was like 3 weeks. Then I went, the 3rd week I was in the hospital. They pumped me full of antibiotics and stuff. And then after I got out, it took me about another 3 weeks to kind of get fully recovered, feel strong again. And, not that fog brain and fatigue. All I wanted to do was nothing when I had it.
So I'm going to ask you after now we've spoke about the EP. I'm going to go back in time to when you first started. So, who inspired you, Sean, to become a singer back in the day? Which singers made you want to be a singer, or did you play guitar first? What happened as a musician? What happened first?
Well, I played some guitar. I mean, I couldn't be shredding in a band, but I could play a guitar. But it was just an opportunity. I worked with Phil and Dean. We worked at this place in Oakland at the Oakland Army base. We took Subarus off of ships and processed them and sent them out on trains. So it was me and Greg Christian and Zet and Eric, I think, worked there. Eric Peterson worked there. And it was a bunch of us that worked there. So when Dean was like, hey, our singer left the band, I just kind of went over to Phil and said, hey, I'll try that. Why not? I'm into the music, and I love this because I hung out at Ruthie's Inn a lot, and you watch a lot of people get on stage and play, and it's like, yeah, shit, I could do that. I just need a band to hook up with, and it just so happened that Jerry left Vio-Lence at the right time for me. It's funny because I did a tryout with them, and they gave me the lyrics, and they were just like, ugh, man, I can't fucking do this. So I had to rewrite the lyrics, and so I go in for my tryout, and I've got all new lyrics written, and they're just kind of like, who the fuck does this guy think he is? And so, I saw Phil. It was like a couple weeks later at Ruthie's Inn. Hey man, what's up? I haven't heard back from you. He's all, oh well, Jerry kind of came back to the band, blah blah blah. And then Jerry left again, and then they're like, hey, well, so you want to try it? So that's just kind of how I wound up in Vio-Lence. I was never in a band before, but I was inspired by the thrash scene because I was in it pretty deep,
Yeah, so
what's in and Stone. And I think my first show was Slayer at the Keystone Berkeley. They still had the black under their eyes.
Oh yeah, wow, that's back in the day. That one, Shona
Oh,
Mercy
yeah.
album. So who inspired you to become a singer? Now, what singers made you think, hey, I want to be a singer? Which ones really?
Well, I like punk. I liked Fear a lot. I still do like Fear, but
They wrote a song called More Beer, didn't they? Back in the day.
Yeah, and the great thing is I love their lyrics. It's just like, so I was like, man, what great lyrics. And so when I was writing lyrics, it was like, man, the lyrics got to be really good. I can't write cheesy shit and expect people to dig it, because like I said, I was into them and GBH and other punk bands, and you can't fake that, right?
Yeah.
And so I think my whole approach is like, what's most important is honesty. Because if you're not true and honest, I think the fans see right through it,
Yeah.
You got
So
to believe in what you're
was
doing.
any metal singers that inspired you as well, or was it just punk? The punk.
No, it was like, it didn't inspire my style. It drove me to want to do this, and then the opportunity arose. But I hung out with Paul Bailoff a lot, and the guys from Heathen and other bands, and it was just kind of one of those things where it was like, yeah, I want to try that, and the opportunity just came about. And so was I inspired? I think I was more inspired by the scene than any band in particular.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't
Because
really
I mean,
into.
Ruthie's in. You go to shows like every weekend almost in the Bay
Really.
Area. Yeah.
Because man, I wasn't really into the punk scene, but I was growing up. I was like when I was like 17 and 16. I was more into like the New York hardcore scene, like Agnostic Front, Leeway, Crumbsuckers, Ludicrous,
Yeah.
that sort of stuff.
Cro-Mags.
Yeah,
We got a
yeah.
chance to play with Cro-Mags, when we were on the Voivod tour.
Well, I saw them in 1987 on the Age of Quarrel tour in England.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, yeah. They were fucking. They played a festival called Christmas on Earth with Overkill, Nuclear Assault, Voivod, Megadeth. There was tons of bands, mate, and
What a lineup.
Cro-Mags were just like fucking incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're full of
A lot of
energy.
energy there. Still are incredible. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, I mean, when I listen to your voice, Sean, you've got a real unique voice. You stand out from a lot of the Bay Area bands, don't you?
yeah, well, I think you can apply that to most of the Bay Area thrash bands. Like we have that sound of thrash metal, but we don't all sound alike. We definitely, there's a difference between us and Death Angel and Forbidden and Testament and, Exodus. But for me, it's like, I didn't, I wasn't like, oh, I want to sound like this or I want to sound like that. I just kind of took the music and wrote my lyrics and created vocal patterns that, I thought sounded good. And it just kind of turned out that it was way different than anyone else. And, that's what helped us stand out, I think, because there was a lot of competition back in the day too.
Oh, oh yeah, definitely. Like there's a lot of people used to play the Stone, if I remember rightly. That was a popular place in San Francisco.
Yeah. The Stone, the Omni. I think our first kind of supporting act was with Laws Rocket at the On Broadway.
Wow.
The Blue Hay Gardens. There was also the One Step Beyond out in Santa Clara and the Cactus Club. I mean, that's a cool thing about that era. It was like there were so many cool places to play, but we really kind of got in well with the owners of the Omni and the Stone, the Nadies. So the Nadies, the Nady microphones, they owned both of those clubs, and so we were able with our demo to start kind of drawing people in. And what was good is that Joey Houston was managing us at the time, and he had a good relationship with those people. So anytime bands came through on tour, we always get the opening spot, So we got to play with Creator and GBH and Suicidal and a bunch of other cool bands that were on tour because the Nadies knew, okay, well, if we put Violence on the gig, even if it's a weekday where a tour's coming through on a weekday, they should be able to bring in at least 100, 150 people, and help get the place sold out or, packed. And so we were pretty fortunate in that, that we had that relationship, and Joey Houston helped us a lot too.
That's cool. So when you look back at the first two albums, which one's your favourite and why?
Uh, I think Impressing the Masses. I mean, Eternal Nightmare is my favorite, but it's because, like I said, we were just young punk kids and we just wanted to play music that we liked, and we wanted to be heavy and hard and faster than anybody. And then Oppressing the Masses was we sat down and started like writing like a band, and because on Eternal Nightmare, Rob wrote Calling in the Corner, the music for Calling in the Corner, but on Oppressing the Masses, it was a combined effort between he and Phil. And I think there's a lot of cool songs on there, and you can hear the growth in the band, from Eternal Nightmare to Oppressing the Masses, and some of the content was, like the Tiananmen Square was going on at the time I wrote Oppressing the Masses, and
Right.
it's kind of funny because I get like we were supposed to go to Australia with Sacred Reich, and then COVID hit, and now it's like they're like, well, can we reschedule? It's like I can't reschedule. I mean, we can't go there right now until you stop doing what you're doing. Your government stops doing what they're doing to the people there, because I can't write a song called Oppressing the Masses and then go to a country and want to make money in a country where the government's oppressing their people.
Yeah.
You know, I read a report the other day and was watching a video. They were using LRAD devices on the people protesting. Well, an LRAD is a microwave device, and it also emits a high pitched frequency. And you know, people were showing up with like swollen faces and burns on their skin, and yeah, it's
Oh,
so it's
that's
like, yeah,
pretty
I
fucked
can't
up.
go there.
That's
It is
fucked up.
fucked up, dude. And I'm like thinking to myself, man, Australia? It's like I thought that was like a really open, free country. And,
Yeah.
you know, that just shows that, you know, power corrupts, and you know.
Yeah, I remember buying the first LP, and I bought the single with a sick bag. The
With the
single
what?
with a single that you released. It came in a sick bag.
Oh
Remember?
yeah, yeah, yeah. The vomit, the puke.
Yeah, the puke
Yeah,
bag. Yeah, I was like,
that's
oh,
chicken soup.
I know. I was like, oh, I had to take it back to the record store because I thought it was going to leak all over the fucking floor. I was like, I can't keep this fucking thing if it's like shit all over the place, man. But yeah, it was like that must be worth some money now. That single.
Yeah, people. I mean, a lot of our stuff is money people can't get. Like Atlantic won't make Oppressing the Masses. They won't press it. We tried to buy the rights back from them, and they wouldn't sell it. And I think they just sold it to someone else. I don't know who it is, but Metal Blade, because we went to Metal Blade and said, well, can you work with Atlantic, see if you can get the rights to this record? And when they did, they said, well, they've already made a deal with someone else on it. And it's like, oh, great. So they wouldn't sell it to us.
Do you know, it's kind of
You know,
weird. Like it's kind of weird. Like bands can't get the rights to their albums, or their albums get deleted, and then people complain about the Russians doing bootlegs. But where are you going to get the material from if nobody can get it?
yeah, on eBay, and it's like hundreds of freaking dollars, you know. And
you know,
then people that get it, they don't want to play it. They want to keep it, and it's like, you know, I
it's
mean, when you
just
pay $300 for an LP, and I've seen it go even higher, you know, Eternal Nightmare. Do you want to play that, or do you just want to put it in your collection and hang on to it? You know?
how much do you reckon that demo's worth that Mechanics were giving away? Because I've got one of those demos, like I told you earlier. Do
Yeah.
you
Well,
reckon
go
that'll be
on
worth?
eBay and check. And
Yeah,
the
yeah.
thing too is I always get questions. Hey, I just bought this on eBay. You know, is it authentic? It's like, I don't know. I mean, I couldn't tell you. The one I have of Eternal Nightmare is the promotional copy, and so it's got the promotional stamp on it. This is for promotion only, not for sale. And but I couldn't tell, you know, someone whether that's real or faked. You know,
Yeah.
but I get that a lot. You know.
So what did you do after you left Violence? And did you form another band, or was you just quit altogether?
I just kind of quit altogether because after Oppressing the Masses, I just had a bad taste in my mouth about the industry. And, you know, I didn't see, it's like, well, we could do what we do and no one's going to care. Actually, the Phil put out that Torque record, and
Yeah, I saw
3 of
them
the
in I
songs
saw
on,
them in Dynamo Festival. That's when I first met Phil. Dynamo Festival.
yeah. And I wrote 3 of those songs, you know, with Phil. Breed Like Rats and Again and Shooter. And they also had another one, I forget what it's called, but it was a punk song that Ray and I wrote together that got on that record. And, you know, I just was like, hey, I gotta, you know, I was like 30, going on 30, and I was like, man, I gotta get a job, make money. I'm not making money doing this, and I need to start a career. So I got my contractor's license and started working in the construction industry, and just kind of built my career during that whole time off. And, you know, we got back together in '01 to do the Thrash of the Titans for Chuck, the 2 Chucks. And we played some shows after that. You know, we did a stint with Overkill and Excel, and then we did a stint with Rob Halford and Testament and Death Angel. And yeah, it's just, and then we were actually writing, Phil and I were writing at the time, and then Rob tapped Phil to join Machine Head, and Phil called me. He's like, well, I was like, hey man, dude, I wasn't wearing blue spandex in someone's backyard when I was 15. You know, it's like, I do music because I like to do it, you know, but you know, you're a musician, you want to be, that was your dream, go play with Machine Head. I mean, you know, they're freaking successful as hell, you know. So I just been working and getting along. And, you know, then when I got ill, it was like a lot of people stepped up to help me out. And I was kind of sitting there in the hospital bed after my surgery thinking, how do I repay these people? You know, it it was like I have to get back on stage somehow, some way. And Phil was still in Machine Head at the time. So it took me about 6 months to recover. My surgery was March 26th of 2018. And I went back to work. I think it was like October. So I was recovering that whole time. And it was in January, after Phil left Machine Head and did a little stint with Slayer. And it was like, hey man, let's do a show. And so that just turned into this.
Excellent. Well, so if you don't mind me asking, what was your problem? What illness did you have?
I had a cirrhosis of the liver. It was caused by what they call alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. So your body creates this protein called alpha-1 antitrypsin, and it cleans your liver cells, it removes toxins from your liver cells and from your lung cells, right? Because they're filtering out those toxins. So they need some way to get them out of your body. And my body didn't produce the alpha-1 antitrypsin protein. And eventually it just killed my liver. It's people that have COPD, that's what they have. They've got the same issue.
Ouch.
But and it does attack the liver. It's rare, but it's not uncommon in that, it does happen.
The most important thing is that you're fighting fit.
Yeah. So I had to have a liver transplant. And, my brother-in-law, Kevin Rivero, he stepped up. He was a match, and he stepped up, and he gave up 63% of his liver as a living donor transplant. So I didn't have to wait for someone to die. So we went into surgery at the same time, and he went in at about 7 a.m., 7:30. And what's funny is my surgeon and his surgeon, they're married, they're husband and wife, and they're at the top of the transplant board at UCSF. And so he went in, and I think he got out of surgery at about 11 o'clock in the morning, 11:30. And then I didn't get out till it was like 8 o'clock at night. I went in at like 8 in the morning. So it was about a 12-hour surgery, and they didn't wake me up for like 3 days.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was an ordeal, man. But a lot of people came forward and did the benefit show for me, and filled through a golf tournament that everybody showed up and raised money to help me out. And what it did is it helped keep my kids' lives from being impacted by me being sick, and pay for a lot of hospital bills.
Yeah,
I paid like 35 grand.
Respect to you, Sean.
Yeah, well, then I was at Exodus Sunday, in Oakland, and Tom's there, and it's like he's like a miracle, and to get on, and I'm not singing, I'm not playing drums like he is, but he went through his cancer, he's a cancer survivor. He's out there banging on those skins.
Crazy maniac.
Yeah, and then Chuck, Chuck Billy, that's when we came back and did Thrash of the Titans back in 2001. He had cancer, and he's out there kicking ass now. So
I mean, that got filmed, didn't it? That concert, did it get filmed?
It did, yeah.
But it never came out, did it? It never came out.
Well, you can go on YouTube and you can see a lot of the clips. If you search Thrash of the Titans, because Anthrax was there, and I think they did SOD, MOD, and we played Legacy, played with Zet singing. So it was a really cool event. And then the Thrash for the thing that was done for me, I think it was called Killian on Command. All those same musicians got together and just played Violent songs. So it was kind of interesting because I was so ill at the time. I think I weighed like 140 pounds, and I just had a procedure the day before, and they were doing the benefit. I knew it was coming, but I didn't want to. They were like, "Well, you want to hear who's going to be on stage?" I was like, "No, I don't. I just kind of want to show up and see what happens and see what it's about." So they had to move it to a different venue because they sold out the first venue, and it was like, well, they were getting so many messages about, hey, we want to get tickets, we want to see this. So then they had to move it to another venue. It was like 2,500 capacity. It was sold out, and the merch line was like across the whole freaking place because people were buying up the merchandise, and yeah, it was really cool. But the biggest thing for me was seeing those guys up there playing. And then I went backstage with Joey Houston and Perry, and we went back there, and I was on the stage in the back there behind the drums, and there's Chuck, and it's just like, it was like he did Torture Tactics. I'm not sure if he did more than one song, but he did Torture Tactics, and it was like, we got back together to help support him for the Thrash of the Titans, and then to see him on stage supporting me, it was really cool.
Well, excellent. So, Sean, I'd like to thank you for doing this interview. Do you have anything
Yeah.
to say to the people that's going to be watching this on YouTube?
Yeah, just get out there, get the EP. You know, it's put out by Metal Blade, came out Friday. We're really happy with it. And you know, don't compromise. Take your thrash metal. Go out there and buy tickets to see the bands out you can, because I'm sure a lot of people out there. Metal Blade came out Friday. We're really happy with it. And you know, don't compromise. Take your thrash metal. Go out there and buy tickets to see the bands out you can, because I'm sure a lot of people out there now realize how important live music is.
Cheers, Sean. Keep in touch, brother.
Cheers.
Stay
Have a
metal.
good night.
Cheers,
Have a
brother.
good night.
Bye-bye.
Later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.